It seems at first glance to be an outlandish claim that Napoleon Bonaparte had anything to do with the creation of one of America's most famous and important government agencies, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. But history is strange, and it is true. Napoleon, of course, didn't found the FBI himself, but a Bonaparte descendant of his most definitely did. Napoleon Bonaparte, a French artillery officer from Corsica, famously rose on the back of the French Revolution to ultimate political power over France as first consul of the Republic in 1799. In 1804 he famously crowned himself Emperor of the French as Napoleon I, ruling until 1814 and conquering half of Europe until finally defeated, only to rise once again for 100 days in 1815 before complete defeat at the hands of a confederation of European powers led by Britain and Prussia at the Battle of Waterloo. Sent into exile on the inhospitable British Atlantic island of St. Helena, Napoleon I died or was murdered in 1821. During his reign as emperor, Napoleon had made his brothers kings of some of the nations he conquered, and he married off all of his siblings, male and female, into the old royal houses of Europe, to further cement his own House of Bonaparte as bona fide royals. The year before he made himself emperor, one of his younger brothers, Jerome, who was serving in the French Navy as an officer, was commanding a French frigate in the West Indies when he accidentally opened fire on a British warship, escalating tensions between the two nations and incurring his brother's considerable wrath. Deciding to flee to the United States until his brother calmed down, Jerome ran up large gambling debts before arriving in Baltimore in Maryland in July 1803. On Christmas Eve 1803, Jerome married a local beauty and heiress, 18-year-old Elizabeth Patterson, against her father's wishes and against Napoleon Bonaparte's rules as well. In 1804, on becoming emperor, Napoleon tried to convince the Pope to annul his brother Jerome's marriage to the U.S. heiress, but this failed, so in 1805 he annulled it himself by imperial decree. At the time, Prince Jerome, as he had then become, and Elizabeth were travelling to Europe, Elizabeth being pregnant with Jerome's child. She hoped to give birth in France. The emperor, however, refused to allow this ship to land, and so the royal couple went to England instead, where their son, Prince Jerome Napoleon Bonaparte, was born. Jerome ended the marriage to Elizabeth and returned to France, being appointed King of Westphalia in Germany by his brother, and subsequently submitting himself to an arranged marriage with a German princess. Elizabeth never saw her ex-husband again, and he never saw his son, and she returned to America with the child. When Emperor Napoleon I fell from power, so did his siblings, including King Jerome. In the meantime, Jerome's son, also called Jerome, grew up in the United States, where he became known as Beau Bonaparte. Because his parents' marriage had been annulled by his uncle, Beau didn't use his title of Prince Napoleon, nor was he considered a Bonaparte in the imperial sense, leaving him free to marry whomever he liked. In 1829, Beau married rich Baltimore heiress Susan Williams, creating an American branch of the Bonaparte family. When Beau's cousin created himself Emperor Napoleon III in 1852, the cousin rescinded the first emperor's ruling, and Beau became a full Bonaparte and officially held the title of Prince Napoleon, but due to U.S. laws concerning titles, never used it. Beau lived his life as a rich farmer in Maryland and a local dignitary, and he died in 1870 at the age of 64. The same year, his cousin, Emperor Napoleon III, involved France in a disastrous war with Prussia that resulted in 1871 with his abdication and exile to England, and France becoming once again a republic, which it has remained ever since. As for Beau Bonaparte's estranged father, Jerome, he had died in France 10 years earlier, at the age of 75, and was buried with great pomp in a grand marble sarcophagus in his brother's chapel at Les Invalides in Paris. Beau and Susan had 2 sons. Jerome Napoleon Bonaparte II, who was born in 1830 and embarked on a military career. He graduated from West Point Military Academy in 1852 and served in Texas in the Regiment of Mounted Riflemen before moving to France and joining the army of his second cousin, Emperor Napoleon III, seeing action against the Russians in the Crimean War, in Algeria, Italy, and the Franco-Prussian War, rising to the rank of lieutenant colonel. In 1871, he returned to the United States and married Caroline Appleton Edgar, granddaughter of former U.S. Secretary of State Daniel Webster, producing 2 children. A daughter, Louise Eugenie Bonaparte, who married a Danish count, the couple having no children. And a son, Jerome Napoleon Charles Bonaparte, who was married to an American but had no children, and died rather tragically in Central Park in New York, tripping over his dog's leash and breaking his neck. Beau and Susan's second son was Charles Joseph Bonaparte, born in Baltimore in 1851. A Harvard graduate who became a lawyer, he lived very well, maintaining a large townhouse in Mount Vernon Belvedere in Baltimore and a large country estate called Bella Vista. A founder of the Reform League of Baltimore, a political movement that tried to oust corrupt local politicians and govern properly, he was also involved with civil service reform. He was a Republican member of the Electoral College for Maryland in the 1904 presidential election, and the next year President Theodore Roosevelt appointed Bonaparte Secretary of the Navy. In 1906, Bonaparte became Attorney General, gaining a strong reputation for bringing suits against trusts, and in particular for destroying the monopoly power of the American Tobacco Company, earning him the nickname Charlie the Crook Chaser. In 1908, Bonaparte set up a new office, the Bureau of Investigation, within the Justice Department, with initially 34 agents, its first actions being cracking down on prostitution. Bonaparte married but had no children. The son of a prince, grandson of a king, and great-nephew of an emperor, he died in 1921 at the age of 70. His greatest legacy, the Bureau of Investigation, went from strength to strength, and the year Bonaparte died, a young investigator named J. Edgar Hoover joined the Bureau, becoming its director in 1924 and changing its name to the Federal Bureau of Investigation in 1935. The American branch of the Bonaparte family has died out, but many people have no idea that they gave America one of its most famous law enforcement agencies, created by the great-nephew of Emperor Napoleon I of France. Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.